Good morning, class. Today we're going to be going over some copyright basics. Your teacher informed me that you're going to be working on a project which involves research, and she wanted us to kind of go over and learn a little bit more about copyright so you have some basic understanding and knowledge. So let's get started here. So the objectives for today are going to be to define copyright, understand the basics of copyright, understand why copyright is important and how it affects you. A lot of times when we're doing a school project, we do a lot of research, we include pictures and quotes in our work, and we don't really think too much about copyright because, it's just a school project and you're a student, that shouldn't affect me too much. I'm just doing this project for school. But it does affect you, and it is important, especially as you move on to college and beyond high school and in your life. Copyright will be around, and you kind of want to know at least the basics and understand exactly what copyright is. So some terms we're going to go over today are copyright infringement, derivative works, fair use, plagiarism, and public domain. So copyright. A copyright is a form of legal protection of an individual's original creative work. As the creator, this means that you automatically have copyright over what you have produced. So, having that legal protection, that is probably one of the most important aspects of copyright. It is a legal matter. If an original work is covered or protected under copyright law, you can get in a lot of trouble for violating that law and using that person's, work or duplicating it, which we'll go over on the next slide. So as the creator, it's important to understand that once you have placed that idea or, created something for school, whether it be a poem, a story, maybe a song you wrote, once you have put that in physical form on paper, it is now copyright protected, and you are the copyright owner. Copyright holder rights. You may create copies and distribute them, and you can also give public access. So for example, if you are an artist and you created a beautiful painting and you have a friend who says, oh, I really want to buy this painting from you, I love it. And you say, okay, I'll sell it to you. So it is your right to sell your work, of course. So you give that to a friend with the understanding that they're going to display it in their home. So then you give them that original painting, as in you're distributing it, giving it to that friend. But maybe you didn't give them permission to, show it to the public, that public access. If that friend were to put that painting on public display, they would be violating your rights as a copyright holder. One of the most important rights of a copyright holder is derivative works. So that means being able to change or modify that original work. So if you could think of maybe a book that you've read that has now become a movie, this is where or how that book was able to become a movie was through the derivative works. So when that book becomes a film, there is an arrangement made, a deal sort of made between, let's say, the author of that book and the person who is creating that film of it. You have to, the copyright holder has those rights to make changes, but then they have to give those rights to someone else, which is a big deal, or some of those rights. Because if you think about a book that you've read that's turned into a film and maybe there was a lot of changes and you weren't really fond of the movie, it is grounded in derivative works. Why the book or the film may be very different than the book that you read. What does copyright protect? So copyright protects books and literature, music, poetry, movies, photography, plays, musicals, and there are definitely more out there. One big one, of course, is art that also has copyright protection. And another one that people don't really think of very often is even choreography. If you're a dancer, choreographer, and you create, maybe you were involved in a musical and you came up with some choreography, that's also protected too. Why is copyright important? Copyright is grounded in law, so it is illegal to ignore and violate copyright laws. You can actually get into some actual legal issues and trouble. Integrity. So honesty, of course, is always important. And if you can think of maybe like a song that you really like, or, you know, of course, a book, but maybe something like music, your favorite song. If someone were to take that person's, song and then just start selling it, the person who wrote the song isn't actually getting any financial gain out of it. And therefore, their work that they work so hard on, they're not benefiting from the distribution of it. So if you wrote a poem or you created a song and you didn't make any money off of it, yet you heard it everywhere and everyone had access to your music, I would imagine that would upset you. I hope it would, especially after working so hard on something. Copyright infringement. So this is when copyright laws are violated. It means the copyright owner's permission was not obtained. It is now a legal matter, and the violator can be charged in court. So if you are distributing someone's work, like let's say you streamed or downloaded a movie that you didn't pay for, and it wasn't actually released, and the person who created the content was financially at a loss, they didn't make any money off of their original idea, that is copyright infringement. So you always want to make sure to either make sure you have permission or have gained permission in order to distribute or copy someone else's original idea. Fair use. Fair use is a little tricky. It is a limitation placed on the copyright owner. Use of a creator's work may be acceptable when used for research or educational purposes. It's more for factual use, may only be a small portion of original work. So, for example, if you watch documentaries or you watch a film where it says there's actual real footage in there, it's most likely covered under fair use. So, let's say you were watching a documentary on the civil rights movement and there was a clip of Martin Luther King that maybe someone else, like a civilian, someone who's not a historical figure, has, or anyone for that matter, had taken like a short clip or video of Martin Luther King himself or another part of the civil rights movement. That is grounded in history, and that can be then used in maybe a film or documentary and covered under fair use. Now, it cannot be a very long clip. It's usually between 30 seconds up to 2 minutes worth of footage that can be covered under fair use, but it can be placed in a film or documentary, and the fact that it's being used for research or to educate, maybe used in class or just so that someone can watch it and they're having some intellectual gain out of that, it's most likely covered under fair use. Public domain. Public domain is important because this is information that can be used freely by the public. There may have no original ownership that maybe we know of. It is more for older works where the copyright has expired. Copyright does expire 70 years after the death of the copyright owner. So maybe a good example would be like Shakespeare's work. It's no longer covered under copyright, so it can be used on a number of items, displays. There is no longer any copyright protection for Shakespeare's work. So this is important to know because this is really free information that may be used, and because it's not protected, it can be used freely. Okay, plagiarism. I know you all have heard of plagiarism, probably have been hearing about it for years now. Plagiarism is presenting someone else's work as your own. The issue with plagiarism that makes it different from copyright infringement is that copyright infringement is grounded in law, whereas plagiarism is grounded in ethics. It's more of an issue of ethics and academics. You can get kicked out of school for presenting someone else's work as your own because you are violating a writer or the creator's intellectual property. They had an original idea or work that they had put on paper that is now being credited to someone else. So rather than like the copyright infringement distribution of that work where you're kind of like duplicating it and giving it out, this is more of the fact that you or whoever is committing that plagiarism is taking on someone else's idea and saying, I created this, I'm the original owner. So some best practices are, for sure, ask questions. If you're not sure, go ahead and ask. You could ask myself, a teacher, just to get some more guidance. Always cite your sources. Quotes and pictures are used quite often in research and in projects, and most of them are covered under copyright. They are protected, and although it may seem innocent, you do need to give credit to the person who, took that photograph or the person who said that quote. Another option is to always request permission from the original the copyright holder. This one's a little tougher. It would take a little bit more time, but it is in fact an option to go ahead and just say, hey, I want to use this in my project. Would that be okay with you? How would you like me to, how do you want the information utilized? It's definitely a form of respect and it can save you from any legal matters or obligations. So that is it for today. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to help. Copyright can be confusing, but we can definitely figure it out. And I hope you learned a little bit more about copyright than you knew before today. So thank you.